I've been running through rain that I thought would never end. Try to make it on faith and struggle against the wind. I've seen the dark and the broken places, whoa, but I know in my soul, no matter how bad it gets, I'll be alright. There's hope in front of me. There's the light, I still see it. There's a hand still holding me, even when I don't believe it. I might be down, but I'm not dead. There's better days still up ahead. Even though I'm all I see, there's hope in front of me. Where the hurt and the tears and the pain all fall behind. You open up your eyes and up ahead there's the big sun shining. Right then and there you realize you'll be alright. There's hope in front of me. There's a light, I still see it. There's a hand still holding me, even though I don't believe it. I might be down, but I'm not dead. There's better days still up ahead. Even after all I've seen, there's hope in front of me. Yeah. Feel your love here by my side. Whoa, hey, hey, whoa, hey, hey, whoa, hey, hey, you're my
Okay. All right already. How are y'all doing today? So we have played with the format for this service, so I will have no idea what's going on at any point in time. So just be ready for that. And we're just trying to switch it up, make sure things are flowing better and kind of adjusting as we go. So now we're going straight to the talk right after the first song. So people that were showing up late before, they're just going to miss the first segment altogether, and that's okay. Okay, let's get to it. So, here's our opening words of wisdom. Decide what you stand for, and then stand for it all the time. Clayton M. Christensen said that. So somewhere around 1920, the Unity movement had a problem. And if you didn't know, Unity is not specifically a religion, it's referred to as a movement, so what we are sitting in this morning is the Unity movement. So they had a problem, or what better could be understood as an issue that up until that point had not quite solidified for them to recognize. It was something that had been sort of brewing below the surface in the movement ever since the concept of unity was born back in the late 1800s, around 1890. But as it approached the 1920s in the movement, as we're moving along, things were starting to take off, it was boiling to the surface. This problem was boiling to the surface, and it was becoming noticeable. Well, as it is often the case with discovering an issue that everyone seems to see but you, it was finally pointed out and brought to the attention of our co-founders, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, by an outside source, an outside entity that brought it to their attention, which is very similar to when I was in junior high. I had fallen into a group of friends that were sort of a negative influence, you might say. And this group of friends was into shoplifting. That's what sort of we did for a boost, an adrenaline rush. So at the pinnacle of this shoplifting friendship group of friends, it wound up with me stealing a very nice ski bag from Boulder Ski Deals. This is a very local story. You always remember Boulder Ski Deals was around for a long time. Well, long story short, my mother, Norma, was always the one who would pick me up from school. She was always the car I'd see pull up when it was time to pick me up from school. Well, on this particular day, after I had this big score of the ski bag, my father pulled up in the car. Now, this was a sign that something very bad was going to happen for me. He never picked us up from school. He was always here at the church doing what he did. And so when I sat down into the passenger seat next to him, everything I had assumed was proven to be true. But he was very quick on words, short on words. He didn't have a lot to say. He started out by saying, he just started driving off, and he said, "I know you stole that ski bag in your closet because I give you your allowance and you can't afford it." So it's pretty much deductive reasoning on his part, not a lot of investigative work there. And then he said, "There is never a good excuse for stealing." He said, "But I stole things growing up as a young man because I was poor and I had nothing and I didn't know better." He said, "But you have everything a kid could want. You have no excuse whatsoever." And that was it. And I started to try to debate and say, "No, I didn't steal the whole thing." And he just looked at me like, "I don't need it. I'm not that dumb." So oftentimes, others can see what we are too caught up in the middle of to see for ourselves. I knew what I was doing was bad, but I was just sort of in this group of friends. It was just the rush. We were doing it, and I just went along with it. And this outside source, my father pointed out how stupid it was. And that was the last time I ever stole anything in that way. I've stolen lots of other stuff, but in that specific way. I'm just kidding. Actually, like this talk, for instance. Actually, the following years, my early college years, I had so much stuff stolen from me that I just sort of accepted and said, "All right, universe, let's just get this over with. Everything you need to take to level out the playing field, go ahead and take it. So let's just get this done before my 30s, which it did. It pretty much cleaned me out. And then in my late 30s, it cleaned me out again in a bigger way. I don't know why that second wave came. But So an outside source had to awaken me to how ignorant I was in the moment. And perhaps this was the case with the Fillmores at that time, around the 1920s. So this is our co-founder, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, if you're not familiar with them. They started this movement. So they were so busy with getting the movement up and running that they were overlooking a very foundational issue that was going on, which was pointed out to them, believe it or not, by a group of fundamentalist and evangelical Christians who criticized unity for what they called abandoning the doctrine of Christianity. It helps to understand that Charles Fillmore very much saw himself as a Christian. The entire time he was building this movement, through the time he actually passed, he very much saw himself as a Christian. He hung out with other Christian ministers and friends and was even a very big part of a group of Christian businessmen that met regularly in the Kansas City area where they lived and were building this movement. Although the Fillmores did know that they did not relate to the Bible and Christianity necessarily like others did that were calling themselves Christians, they still considered themselves a part of the Christian family. Even though they might have been a little bit on the outskirts, they still considered themselves a part of the Christian family. But the rest of the Christian family did not see it that way. And they were calling the Fillmores out on this, calling them on the fact that they had no core doctrine or set of beliefs. Some even said unity was nothing because it stood for nothing. And these critics made it quite clear that unity was not Christianity if it didn't agree with the fundamental tenets of Christianity. They said, if you don't believe these fundamental tenets, then you are not Christianity. And I imagine this was a painful time for Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. Essentially, you have to think about their friends and their community were saying, you don't belong. Not only you don't belong, but also what you teach and what you believe is non-existent. It's irrelevant because it's not in our core doctrine. Now, what I love about what I like to call old school unity is that old school unity had way more guts than modern unity does today. The Charles and Myrtle that I see did not back down in those days. They did not hide or try to pray away their problems. They acknowledged it and they faced it head on. You see, they could have tried to ignore what the Christians were saying and saying, that's your thing, we don't have to listen to you. They could have tried to deny what they were saying and saying, no, 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 we have this thing, we're special, we're different. Or they could have had a vague spiritual response coded in some mumbo-jumbo that they put together, which is what we often do today, just trying to divert and distract the fact that we are different than Christianity. But the Fillmores did not do any of that. They heard what was being said by their critics, by their friends and colleagues. They acknowledged the truth in what was being said by them. They didn't take offense and step back and say, no, you're wrong. They listened to it and they acknowledged what they were hearing, and then they did something about it, which I commend them for. If they were really going to teach, and I think they were probably aware enough to realize this at that time, if they're really going to teach the next generation of truth students and teachers, their message would have to be consistent, on point, and rooted in a foundation that is steadfast and clear so that that message could go on after them. Because in an uncertain world, like it was at that time and like it is today, people are seeking and need clarity. This is true of all time. The world has always been uncertain, and people have always been seeking clarity. And if you don't have clarity, then you're not helping them find it. Now, in their relationship, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, Charles was the intellect. He was the researcher, he was the scientist, he was the writer. And Myrtle, on the other hand, was the heart-centered intuitive that was experiencing first what Charles would eventually test and discover for himself later. So she would have these experiences, these spiritual experiences, these discoveries, these healings, and then he would see that, put it to test like a scientist, and figure out how to make it come about for himself, so he would experience it later. It's an interesting relationship. So it is said that the response that came out of this, the reaction to this, was written by Charles Fillmore, but there is no doubt it was created by the both of them. But at this time, students were flocking to unity. And actually, it was one of the only movements that was ordaining women. So women were flocking to unity to become ministers, because there was very few of anywhere in the 1920s, the 1910s, in that time frame, that were recognizing women as teachers and ordaining them to teach. So they were having tons of women flocking to this movement, plus men as well. And their early successes, all these people, all this growth happening suddenly, might have caused them to accidentally skip the crucial part of defining exactly what they are first. So here are the type of questions that they took to task on behalf of this unity movement. Who are we? What do we believe? What do we stand for? Where are we going? And how do we get there? What we see here are some of the questions that anyone will and should face at some point in their life. This is not just about the movement, this is about any one of us going through a growth phase. We actually should face this many different times in our lives because the answers to these questions mature and grow with us as we mature and grow. But without the answers, we face an identity crisis, or what might be better called a crisis of identity, due to a lack of identity. Trying to live without having first worked through these questions is like living in a maze, as opposed to living on a path that is clear and understanding. So answers to problems, when we live without having resulted those questions, without having worked through those questions, we come to answers that are just at random. Our answers aren't clear and direct, they're just random. Our choices are made without direction, and our results and reactions are experienced without reason. We don't know why we do what we do because we don't know why we should do what we are currently doing. Does that make sense? We don't know why we're getting the results we're getting because we don't know why we headed in that direction in the first place. Where we live and how we live, where we work, how we work, where we play, how we play, where we serve, how we serve, who we are and who we surround ourselves with, all are based on these core questions that the Fillmores were taking to task. And we will experience a lack of direction and meaning until we have answered those questions. I believe the ladies are back there, and it's time to share another song with us, but they probably don't know that.
While they're set up, we are Alethea Rising when we're not singing in church. And the song we're going to be doing for you, it's sort of a chant. It's a little bit longer than a chant, but we're going to sing it enough times that maybe you all will feel comfortable joining us in singing the song. And we're performing tomorrow at a house concert here in North Boulder, and if you're curious to know more about that, we'll be out in the lobby afterward and can share information about that with you.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle around to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle around to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle around to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
This next song is by two sisters that we just got to go hear in concert just a week and a half or two ago, and so we get to share some of their inspiration with you.
I have something in my eye. Oh no. Trying not to wink. Okay.
I am resilient. I trust the movement. I negate the chaos, uplift the negative. I show up at the table again and again and again. I close my mouth and learn to listen. Whoa, whoa, oh, oh. Whoa, whoa, oh, oh. Whoa, whoa, oh, oh. Whoa, oh, oh. Whoa, whoa, oh, oh. Whoa, whoa, oh, oh. These times are poignant. The winds have shifted. It's all we can do to stay uplifted. Pipelines through backyards, wolves howling out front. Yeah, I got my crew, but truth is what I want. Realigned and on point, power to the peaceful, prayers to the water, women at the center, all vessels open to give and receive. Let's see the system brought down to its knees. Whoa, whoa, oh, oh. Whoa, whoa, oh, oh. Whoa, whoa, oh, oh. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Whoa, whoa, oh, oh. Whoa, whoa, oh, oh. Whoa, whoa, oh, oh. Ooh, 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 I'm made of thunder, I'm made of lightning, I'm made of dirt, yeah, made of the findings. My father taught me that I'm a speck of dust and this world was made for me, so let's go and try luck, see. I got my roots down, 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 down deep. I got my roots down, 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 down deep. I got my roots down,
Got my roots down, got my roots down,
deep. I got my roots
got my roots down, got my roots down, got my roots down.
deep. So what are we doing here? What has been done? What are you gonna do about it when the world comes undone? My voice feels tiny, I'm sure so does yours. Put us all together, make a mighty roar. I am resilient. I trust the movement. I negate the chaos, uplift the negative. I show up at the table again and again and again. I close my mouth and